of years, every aspect of Highland culture has been recorded and celebrated in music, song, poetry, and dance. And in the 15th and 16th century, Gaelic culture experienced a golden age.
Through the ages, the Highlands and Islands of Scotland have given rise to unique and beautiful forms of cultural expression. But they've also been the scene of extraordinary brutality. Terrible atrocities were committed here during the 16th century as rival clans battled for supremacy. This was a time of fighting and feasting. Great victories were celebrated in extravagant style. It was a high point for Gaelic culture, but one stained with blood.
One clan in particular flourished during this violent chapter in Scotland's history, and their name? MacLeod.
I'm making a personal journey beyond the myths and the tartan to uncover the real history of Scotland's Highland clans. For me, the story of Clann MacLeod starts here at Dunvegan Castle on the Isle of Skye, one of the most enduring symbols of clan power anywhere in the Highlands. Dunvegan has been occupied by the chiefs of Clann MacLeod for over 800 years. Renowned for its great artists as well as its great warriors, in its heyday, Dunvegan was the cultural capital of the Gaelic-speaking world. The chiefs of Clann MacLeod felt that it was their duty to support and to encourage the arts. They surrounded themselves with poets and musicians and storytellers to entertain their guests at lavish feasts for which they became increasingly famous. Dunvegan's association with great banquets and exquisite music goes back to the beginning of the 16th century, when one man turned the MacLeods into a powerful clan that would take on all its rivals. His name was Alistair Croteach. In the year 1500, Alistair Croteach MacLeod became the 8th chief of Clann MacLeod. If Dunvegan on Skye was his capital city, the Isle of Harris on the other side of the Minch was MacLeod's ancestral and spiritual home. Legend has it that he was named Croteach, Gaelic for hunchback, because of a sword cut to his shoulder received while fighting his bitter rivals, the MacDonalds. He was both a great warrior and a champion of Gaelic culture. Today there's evidence of both at St Clement's Church on Harris, a 15th century architectural gem and the final resting place for a man thought by many to be the MacLeod's greatest chief.
Well, a lovely space. I've never been here before, and it's a place I've always wanted to visit. Now, it's very important in the history of Clann MacLeod because for generations the chiefs of Dunvegan and Harris were buried here. Because the one that we want is the most powerful of them all, Alistair Croteach. Now this, I think, must be his tomb because it occupies, well, kind of prime site, if you like, in the church. It's on the south side, beside where the altar would have been, and it's a beautifully ornate piece of carving, wonderful stonework. Down here, we've got an inscription in Latin, ʻkʰl, it's here lies the body of Alexander. Alexander, that's English for the Gaelic Alistair, MacLeod. So there's no doubt that this is the tomb of Alistair Croteach. Over here, a castle looks remarkably like Dunvegan Castle, and if anything speaks of the power and significance of this great Highland chief, it must be in the emblem of this carved Berlin or West Highland Galley, because no one was really qualified to have a sign or a symbol like that on their grave unless they were really and truly powerful. Here he lies, the great clan chief with his sword on his chest. And looking at this tomb, I get the feeling that Alistair Cruthach was more than just a great fighter, more than just a powerful military figure. This magnificent work of art was commissioned by him, and that indicates to me that Alistair Cruthach was a man of culture and a man of sophistication.
The wealth to build such a lasting memorial came from Alistair Cruthach's ability to control a critical resource: land. The chief of the Macleods of Dunvegan and Harris controlled some of the richest land in the Highlands, and what he had, he would flaunt. In 1536, Alistair Cruthach made a visit to Edinburgh and was really impressed by Holyrood Palace, and especially the banqueting hall with its great ceiling and its magnificent chandeliers. As he was admiring this, a lowland noble came and tapped him on the shoulder and said, "I bet you have nothing like this on Skye." Immediately, Alistair Cruthach came back and said, "Oh, we've got something much more impressive, much grander." Now, when the king heard of this boast, he wanted to find out for himself, and the following summer, when he was at Dunvegan, he was taken by a servant up to the top of the hill behind me, where he was met as the sun went down by the most spectacular sight he'd ever seen, because there, at the top of the mountain, stood the MacLeod chief, surrounded by hundreds of his clansmen, each holding a flaming torch. Now, the legend has it that Alistair Cruthach greeted his monarch with the words, "Welcome, sire, to my banqueting hall, where the ceiling is the heaven and where the floor is the ocean deep, and where my table is 2,000 feet above the sea." Now, the king was so impressed by this magnificent bout of boasting that the mountains have been known as MacLeod's tables ever since. James IV rewarded Alistair Cruthach's loyalty by granting the MacLeods more land on Skye, land that for centuries had belonged to the MacDonalds. The king's generous gift would reignite one of the most violent feuds in clan history.
This now peaceful landscape in the Trotternish district on Skye became a bloody theatre of war in the 16th century as the MacLeods clashed with their bitter rivals, the MacDonalds. In Gaelic, this period is known as Líon na Críoch, the age of feuds and forays.
The river Snizort marks the ancient front line between the two warring clans. I've come here to meet historian Alison Cathcart, who studied the origins of a feud that would last for over 100 years. Alison, what triggered this period of feuding in the Highlands?
James IV really wants to establish his royal authority in the region. He wants to curtail the activity of the MacDonalds, who were really causing a lot of problems at the time. So he tries to sort of bring about a divide and rule policy. You know, if you work with me, I'll reward you. And so he gives some clan chiefs title to lands that they occupy. But that, in doing so, he really creates an awful lot of more problems that he hadn't really foreseen. Alistair Cruthach receives a charter from James IV to land, some of which over here in Trotternish on the other side of this river. And that gives him a legal right to lands that he's occupied. But that conflicts with claims of possession that another clan, the MacDonalds, have.
It seems to me as if clan culture is totally bound up with land ownership.
Yeah, it is. There's such a strong connection between clan and the land that they inhabit. You have what's known as derived in Gaelic, which is a claim of possession, land that your clan, that your ancestors occupied for centuries, and based solely on those rights of occupation, that land is yours. And so it's symbolic, but it's fundamental to the clan system. Land is their most important resource.
And it's worth spilling blood over, presumably.
Absolutely. And they spill lots of it readily.
By attempting to give the clans official ownership of land traditionally held by their rivals, the king provoked feuds all over the Highlands. When Alistair Cruthach died in 1547, the MacLeods were totally immersed in a culture of blood. Clan now attacked clan in a series of vicious tit-for-tat raids. One of the most notorious incidents